All right. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Worcester City Council held by Zoom video conferencing and YouTube this Monday, May 17th, 2021. It's after 7:30 p.m. and I hope you either got your tax return filed or you got your extension in because today is the deadline. The next council meeting will be Monday, June 7th, 2021. And now, Mr. Paulo, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ansel,
Here.
Mr. Bostancic. Where did
You're
he?
muted, Bill.
Mr. Cavan,
Here.
Mr. Myers,
Here.
Mr. Sanders,
Here.
Mr. Silvestri,
Here.
Ms. Warden.
Here.
I see Bill listed, but his microphone's off. I don't know where he is.
Let me check to see if he's trying to get back on again.
And I see a call-in user. I don't know who that is.
It's Roger.
It's Roger.
I don't see Bill on here anymore.
Yeah, he just blipped off. Well, if he joins us, fine. Either way, we do have a quorum. And welcome everyone. And hopefully you got to enjoy some of the sunshine that's been eluding us this spring here in May. And since we have a quorum, the agenda will remain as presented. And as we normally do, at this time, I'd ask you to stand and join the members of City Council in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is the approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 meeting. So I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Silvestri. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sanders. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes of May 3rd, 2021 are approved. Welcome, Mayor. Good seeing you. Look forward to what you have to say this evening, so we'll just get right with it and turn it over to you, sir.
All righty. Thank you there, President Bytendijk and council members. Nice to see everyone this evening. I have a list of things. Really is some really surprises and special things. Start out with the biggest news to report is the opening up of our country and state from mask protocol of the last year used to contain the COVID virus. As of 3 days ago, both the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, and Ohio Governor DeWine have instituted, quote, fully vaccinated people can resume activities without wearing a mask or physically distancing, unquote. This is the start of returning to normalcy. We have instituted this protocol in all of our city facilities. Worcester Community Hospital has been recognized as a 2021 recipient of the Silver Award in Commitment to Excellence using the Baldrige Excellence Framework. This is the first time our hospital has been reviewed by this independent panel of judges and was recognized with a Silver Award. So congratulations to Worcester Community Hospital. Main Street held its first farmers market of the year on the square this past Saturday, another step forward in getting back to normal. Our city will be observing our Independence Day celebration with fireworks on the night of July 4th up at the Kinney Fields off Highland, Burbank, and Oldman Roads. Our thanks to Gil Ning, the Rotary Club, and generous donors for putting on this year's display. The rain date is set for July 5th if needed. The Memorial Day Parade Committee decided it could not put on the Memorial Day Parade this year due to the virus. They will be holding an annual remembrance ceremony at Wooster Cemetery on Memorial Day Monday, March 30 or May 31st, starting at 10 a.m. Here's one that surprised me and hopefully will surprise all of you, but Gojo Industries has informed me and requested that I share with our community that Lester Holt of the NBC Nightly News, Channel 3, locally, will feature on Wednesday, May 19th, so this Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., a segment which will showcase an interview and tour of the Gojo Wooster campus in their Across America series. This will be a very exciting introduction of our community to the nation and the good works that Gojo Wooster provided to the world in Purell production over the past year. So please spread the word. We'd love to have as many people doing it as possible. We would like this to be our last Zoom City Council meeting and ask council if that will work to have the June 7th council meeting in person. According to all of the guidelines that we've received to date, that is possible to do in a safe and orderly fashion according to the health rules. So we'll let you guys think on that through the meeting and we discuss at the end of the meeting what people's pleasure is. And lastly, I would like to announce that Jeff Baddick will be retiring. Not that I like him leaving, because I've enjoyed having his presence in our community, the manager for the many, many years he's been with us. But I have asked Ashley Hirschberger, and she accepted the role of recreation manager for the city of Worcester. This will be a shared role with Jeff acting as a mentor through the transition time to learn the duties and plan for the future for the recreation department. So congratulations and thank you, Ashley, for accepting that position and again,
great job, Ashley.
For everything that he's provided for our city. So with that, President Beitendijk, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Don't want to make you look bad, Mr. Mayor, but I got to recognize my own service club, Exchange Club, who helped make the fireworks possible as well with a generous donation.
Absolutely.
So, and I see Mr. Bostancic finally got his technical difficulties taken care of and has joined us. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, we do have a petition. We have a liquor permit request from Bob Evans Restaurant. As you know, we can either request a hearing here in Worcester, which is the county seat, a hearing in Columbus, or we can waive a hearing on this permit request.
President Beitendijk, motion to waive hearing.
All right.
I question though if we're going to get a second one from the other Bob Evans, if this is a new corporate thing they're doing, but
I don't know, but I'll recognize your motion to waive. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. Would you please call the roll, Mr. Paulo?
Don't you usually have me read the heading?
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, this is a liquor control request, Bob Evans Restaurant LLC, doing business as Bob Evans Restaurant, number 2036, 3660 Burbank Road, Worcester, Ohio, 44691, permit class D2.
All right, now would you please call the roll on the waiver of the hearing?
Mr. Ansel,
Yes.
Mr. Bostancic,
Yes.
Mr. Cavan,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
yes.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Silvestri,
Yes.
and Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing will be waived, and will you notify the Department of Liquor Control, please? I gotta say, at my age, you almost start to think you see everything. I never thought I'd have a Bloody Mary and pancakes at Bob Evans in my lifetime, but so I'm never going to say I've never, I've seen it all. I'll never say that. So moving right along, our communications from the public, Mr. Scavelli, I look to you.
We have no comments this time.
Okay. So that'll allow us to go right to item 5 on the agenda, which are committee reports. And I don't think there are any, nor are there any public hearings this evening. So rolling along, we move to item 6, unfinished business. We have one item. It's ordinance number 2021-19. It's on its second reading. It'll be presented by Mr. Ansel. Mr. Paulo, I won't forget you this time. Would you please read the title?
Ordinance number 2021-19. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Pittsburgh Avenue Properties LLC for certain tax incentives for immediate enactment.
All right, Mr. Ansel, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed in great detail at our May 3rd council session, a well-established and thriving business is reaching out to request an abatement on an expansion to their existing manufacturing facility located on Pittsburgh Avenue. We're all familiar with it. And I won't go through the entire summary, but this is a sizable investment between $1 million and $1.2 million in property, new construction, total investment $1.3 to $1.9 million. So it is a very significant investment for a small local based company. The projected savings range will be between $8,800 and $12,500 annually. So it is significant over the term of the requested abatement. As we discussed, this was unanimously approved by the Wooster or Wayne Economic Development Council and Wooster Growth Corporation, and was not opposed via the schools. However, there has been some discussion, and I'm glad we kept this on first reading last session, although it appears to be very straightforward and viable. There were a few concerns voiced by adjacent residents, particularly on the west boundary line off Henry Street. Specifically a group, a family that owns 4 homes down in the quadrant there, immediately adjacent to the green space, the wood line on the western part of the EPAC property. And with that discussion, they recognize and want to be good neighbors with EPAC, and I know that Mr. Miller has had some discussions with them regarding noise mitigation, and we talked about that at our last session regarding a piece of equipment to move the containers so they don't have to make a lot of noise moving and storing their containers on the outside. But one of the things that we discussed outside of our council sessions, and I've had discussions with Mr. Bostancic and Mr. Myers specifically, relates to a contingency request, and we have Mr. Miller here this evening, relative to putting a barrier or privacy fence along that back portion of the drop lot adjacent to the wood line, just to provide a little more separation from that expansion corridor, then across the ravine in the woods with those neighbors. The neighbors indicated that that would be satisfactory. They felt that that would be something of good faith, that EPAC would show their commitment to the neighborhood. It's certainly, right on the fringe of the industrial zone within the city. And it was one of those unique parcels that does butt up against some residential areas. But again, beyond that, it's primarily, down to the Bower Road area, the floodplain, and the various structures there. Mr. Miller, would you like to address that request of those residents regarding some type of barrier delineation between the new expansion, primarily the drop lot, and those residents on the Henry Street corner there adjacent to your property?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the time. And I want to thank Mr. Stanzik for reaching out this weekend. I appreciate the time and the ability to talk and spend some personal time on this topic. So to make sure I understand correctly, we are talking about the potential to put a fence at the bottom of our existing lot down through all the way to Henry Street. Is that correct? Or
yes. Yeah, on the western part of your lot, immediately adjacent to your new drop lot and manufacturing facility. Correct.
So I'm a little hesitant to go that route. I did check on some costing. Had some questions even to effectiveness as well, but for a couple of reasons, I guess, from just the lay of the land. If you'll see, I'm sorry, we don't have a visual of the lot, but the building will actually be tucked as far away from a residential property as really we could on site. So it's tucked over in that southeast corner. And aside from that, we'll have, and I did measure or looked at prints, we'll have from the residential property line, there's a tree line there, and there's an existing ditch there that we won't touch. So we won't disturb the tree line. We won't disturb the ditch. There's also that's where our retention basin will go in. So then that's an additional amount. So it's approximately 250 feet from the residential property line all the way to the beginning of our lot. And then from the residential line all the way to our building will be approximately 415 feet. And I did talk to a fencing company and I got a quote. I got a quote for the whole bit along the residential property line, which was pretty large. So I haven't done the math on that smaller footage, but it still would be a sizable investment. The one thing I think it could potentially cause maybe more of harm than good, I think, from a sound barrier. So it's pretty heavily wooded there, and we and because we aren't disturbing that area around the ditch, the mature trees will be there. If we put a fence in there, we will need to cut down some of the trees. I think mature trees and with the summertime and leaves on will also help mitigate noise more so than a fence that's 6 to 8 feet. I think we've given instruction, and it's a little further down from where our AEP line crossed, but we actually pulled just as an example of wanting to be good neighbors and making sure that there is a barrier there, we had AEP modify their original design of coming down into that area and cutting trees and clearing trees there. So we cut across our parking lot so that we could save those trees in the corner. And there are some really nice pines down in that area. So with that, I think there's
Jason,
Maybe
what
better.
about this? And here's the attachment that was provided in our council packet, and I'm holding it up. I don't know if you can see it or
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't know if the fence is the best solution, but adjacent to the proposed storage lot here next to your facility expansion, when they're doing the cutting and grade and they've done some rough cut and fill already, why couldn't they put a bit of a mound against that 100-foot section there and plant? Because the problem is in the wintertime, when the deciduous trees lose their leaves, then you lose your screening. In the spring, summer, and fall, there's no problem. But earthwork is cheap. Why not mound that there and then put some evergreen trees in that over time will grow and be more of a seasonal barrier? And nothing's better than trees for noise reduction. And that would seem to be a very low cost solution because they're going to be in there cutting and filling anyway. And it would be a nice natural mound buffer between you and the neighbors. Would that be something that you would consider?
Yeah, we definitely would. And I would need to follow up just to make sure from and I'm sure we can make it work from a water detention standpoint, just make sure
Yes.
with Schaefer Johnson that everything is covered there. But yeah, we would definitely be willing to do some work in that area. I should also point out too, as far as from a noise standpoint, what we are going to primarily be making in that building is the small containers, the front rear load containers. So they will be fully picked up by a forklift, carried to the spot and set down. So there really shouldn't be much noise. As far as product that we build, that would be the least, say, intrusive to the environment around us. These are the ones. But yeah, I think that's a good solution. That makes sense. I think, in reality too, even if that wouldn't work in that particular spot, I think we could find some spots over along that residential line where we would potentially be able to put some additional trees. We did have, like I said, the plan is to be good neighbors and to keep that area as wooded as possible. And we made the decision to save some of the bigger conifers back there. So we would be open to that.
And really, the way the houses are set back, the only really two houses, I believe, are the 1056 and 1046. The rest of them are far enough away, and it is a very nice, kind of fluctuating elevation area between your facility and their facility. As a matter of fact, you couldn't even see it today with the trees all being filled in. But again, that's something that was discussed, and Councilman Bostancic brought that up during his face-to-face with the neighbors. I just had telephone conversation with the neighbors. And then Mr. Myers and I went this afternoon and looked at it. And it would seem to be a reasonable and cost-effective compromise. At least they feel that you're trying to maintain that separation. But it is a long distance, like you said. It's more than a football field away. Where you're proposing the addition to their boundary or property boundary, it looked to be longer than a football field. And you said it's 450 feet from the new building. Now, that's not your drop lot that you're talking about. So I'm probably closer to 300 feet versus the 450 feet. But that being noted, I am prepared to suspend the rules this evening. So I'll go ahead. Thank you for your input, Mr. Miller. I think we've had enough time to consider this. I don't think waiting 2 more weeks will make much of a difference. And we've had the discussion regarding some type of barrier separation, and the feedback. I know that you will work your best to come up with an agreeable solution that's cost effective. So With that, I would motion to suspend the rules of council this evening and move ordinance 2021-19 to third and final reading.
Mr. Ansel has moved to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Myers.
Second by Mr. Myers. Ms. DiPaolo, would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
and Bostancic.
No.
All right, the rules are suspended. Do you have another motion for us? Mr.
Motion to adopt, Mr. President.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. Any further discussion?
Mr. Bidendike, can I chime in?
Sure.
Yeah, it is correct. I talked to the neighbors I went down and looked at the property and discussed with them and walked the area with the neighbors on Saturday, early Saturday afternoon. Now, I think the problem they have with the noise is not going to be, we discussed the new building, but and they understood, and I pointed out that it will be that that EPAC was very diligent and moved that building, the possible new building, 500 feet away. But I think the more the noise they were having a problem with was the existing structure. Now EPAC's been very good about ordering a new piece of equipment that will actually pick up the large containers that they are building. Instead of dragging them across the pavement on rollers to move them, is going to actually pick them up and set them down. And they've been really nice to do that. But the current tree line is not all that thick. I mean, there's maybe it's a few feet in a lot of places, and you can see, I mean, the leaves are out right now. You can see right through it in a lot of pieces of that property. So the current tree line really doesn't have any measurable effect, I think, on, for the most part, on noise and or screening the property from the manufacturing facility. So I think the residents are more concerned about noise from the parking lot as well, screeching tires, lights, and noise coming from the existing structure. I would really like to see more of a commitment from EPAC as far as I'm not wedded to a fence in particular, but I'm rather leery of just talking about trees too, because they're going to take years to grow in. The mounding option that Mr. Ansel described and a possibility combination with trees might be effective. I mean, I'm not set on particular fence. I'm just concerned about results. But I hate to go to third and final and then vote on this without a specific commitment from EPAC to really do something. These people have been there for over 50 years, and the manufacturing facility is relatively recent compared to that. And I think this deserves a little bit more discussion before actually voting on the abatement. I would like to leave it at that and see if anyone else has anything they would like to add to this.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I'd like to ask Mr. Miller, first of all, if we vote this evening and you do not receive the abatement that you're requesting, will EPAC move forward with the planned expansion anyways?
Great question. And we'll need to talk as a group. I mean, this process started in December. We had looked at a spot outside of town that we have a lease secured. So we have a 10-year lease out there. And the initial project started with, hey, we're going to either modify a building out there or we're going to put new construction out there with that renewed lease. And after talking to some of the folks within the city and looking at our property again, it made a difference. We thought we'd get the abatement, and that was kind of the turning point. So we'd have to circle back and see what we want to do. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And then I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm unfamiliar with the noise that the rolling the devices on the rollers and for, to move them around the facility.
Sure.
I'm unfamiliar with that level of noise, but I do live relatively close to Worthington Industries and Artiflex or whatever it's called now. I feel like it's changed a lot. But anyway, I'm blocks away from that, and I can still hear the picking up and setting down of large metal objects. And so when you say that they're going to be using forklifts to pick up and set down, that doesn't put me at ease when it comes to any sort of sound barrier. I feel like that could even be more of a luminous. It could be louder and more of a disturbance. And I know that's something that's, you kind of have to wait to find out, which is unfortunate. So I'm encouraged at the idea that you're thinking or considering putting in some sort of sound barrier. And I also like Mr. Ansell's suggestion of the mound. I would encourage you to look at the arborvitae trees. And I know that's something that the electric company is very, very favorable about putting up. When they install different substations, they always surround them with those trees because they grow very rapidly and they're very dense in their foliage. Well, they're evergreen trees. So that might be something to consider to provide a quick growing and aesthetically pleasing buffer to the residents. I did vote to move this to third and final reading tonight, but I would not be opposed to allowing the neighborhood, the residents to comment on this in an in-person meeting. I know there are some reasons that they're unable to attend these Zoom meetings, and so I've got my phone as well, and they have a very good argument for why they're concerned for this. And I don't blame them. They've lived in a very nice neighborhood for a long time and they don't want it to be further disrupted. But I believe that you're good neighbors to them and you want to do what's best for everybody involved. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Warden. Very good comments too, as well as the setting down of the containers. And for us, it's very important that these things don't get slammed around because what they'll be transporting is our finished product. So care needs to be taken that they can't be slammed around. We do have very well-trained forklift operators, I should say, and that the product outside should not be banged around or slammed. Even then, with the type of forklift that we're getting it's called a combi lift. So if you picture the letter L with, it has the two stands on it and you can set a roll-off container right on there and then transport that and then pick up and put in place in the yard. So that's one piece of equipment, and that's actually on order. It should be getting it this week. So we have that in the works. We also, on things where we can mitigate noise, we mandate that our garage door to the west, in the overnight hours in the summertime, it gets hot in the plant, and oftentimes the guys will want to open the garage door there. Tell them to keep that closed. We monitor that, as much as possible. Obviously, they may need to open for a bit to transport something in and out, but for the most part, that garage door is shut. We've done that over the years. We keep our ramp coming out of the building in good repair so the containers don't jostle as they go over. But I am really excited on this new combi lift that I think it's going to make a really big difference. And then as far as that structure, I understand that it is thin right there. And we were a bit at the mercy of AEP and their protocols right there. We would have preferred to leave it a little bit more enclosed. But there is we would be open to, filling in a bit there. The one thing, and we actually had already had conversations in the initial plan with AEP, And their concern was that the trees would go so rapidly, so then they get up into the wires. And so we were a little bit limited there, but we'll continue to talk through options. There would be options to where, and I don't know how this would flow with the neighborhood, but at times on the, in that, thinking of that exact area, I think it slopes a little. We may not have had a rack there, but we have used in the past larger racks with the backside solid that would potentially mitigate some noise, and it would actually be a win-win. We could store some material, probably some trailer axles on there. That then that would also be a barrier. It would be a little bit higher than a wall. It would give a somewhat of a sound barrier. It would be a little bit covered with the tree line intact. Maybe it would break up that dark silhouette as well. We could look into things like that, but I mean, it's definitely been on our radar. It was in discussions all along. Again, it was, we're somewhat at the mercy of AEP on the initial pass through, and then what we can and what we can't plant there, and also how we mound. I think the water, there may be a stretch of water coming through there. I'd have to double check that.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, this is Scott Myers. I did receive a call from some of the neighbors there. Unfortunately, I didn't get the message till after Mr. Bostancic went out and met with them, so I wasn't able to join them. I did take a look and view the property today. Two couple comments. One, it appears as though you're doing everything possible to be a good neighbor, and we certainly appreciate that. Most of these points are not relative to the abatement process. It sounds like the predominance of these is existing conditions and ongoing operations. So I will be supporting your abatement this evening. But also, I do want to say that I appreciate all the efforts you've made. I had a client here recently in my business that had some issues with visual barrier and sound. There's a residence on Bell Avenue, which is obviously a very commercial district, south of Wendy's there on the corner of High Street and Bell. There's an old historic house that you might see there, big brick house. And the property just to the south of that tends to get guests at night. I think it's an Eagles Lodge or an Elks, one of the animal clubs. You have obviously some visual and some sound barrier, and Jennifer Warden is correct. We used arborvitae's in a row of those. So feel free to email or call my cell phone. Drive by and take a look, and I can tell you what we did and why we did some of the things we did in the case. So again, thanks for trying to be such a good neighbor. We do appreciate it. We appreciate keeping your business in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Anyone else? Be
Mike,
aligning the Elks there. That's the Elks are on Market Street.
Mr.
Then it's
Biden,
another moose or eagle or something.
Yeah, Mr.
Mr.
Bostancic,
Biden, yeah, can
what
I
else would
ask
you like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Miller a question or two if I could.
Make it brief. You've had your bite at the apple already.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Miller, if we, I know this abatement does not directly tie into the existing problems there, like Mr. Myers has said, but I think it should be tied to some sort of public commitment that I know you've taken this noise situation seriously. You spent some good, I think you're spending some good money on some equipment that will alleviate some of it. And what kind of public commitment can we get right now if we've already gone to third and final that we vote for this, that you will seriously consider some sort of further structure there, either as a fence or mounding or trees, that this will go forward if we do vote for this abatement.
Could I add in there as well as the potential for a rack done, which we would have had in specific areas before?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and yeah, so something to that effect. I mean, of course, I hope what we've done in the past, and I hope who we are, we're not a big corporation. We're part of the community as well. And you know, we interact with people on a daily basis that are near to our facility. And so it's not like we're running anywhere. Then, you know, the entire management team is right there at 1109. And we've talked with every neighbor that's called or stopped in and over the years. So I hope that our past history gives assurances that we will continue to be good neighbors. I think we'll find a solution. I know you weren't part of you couldn't hear the conversations we had initially on the trees and all that, but there was a very extended conversation of making sure that we don't make that area bare. And also then with the intent on the back end with AEP of, hey, what can we do? And, you know, we'll follow up with some of the ideas that we have in place. But again, I hope our past will to be a good neighbor and actions speak for themselves, and we'll continue to try to do that.
Would you be open to having like a neighborhood meeting with the current residents, maybe in your offices or something, to maybe come to a successful resolution or some sort of a plan that will satisfy both parties?
Well, I want to be careful of what I would commit to and create expectations for. I mean, I wouldn't want to. We are zone commercial, and we do have a business to run, and I wouldn't want to create expectations that a meeting then would mean, oh, okay, we'll bring our ideas and they'll do them. That would be unfair to both parties and create an unfair expectation. But to listen, for sure. I mean, that's what we've done over the years. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, if I could weigh in briefly, you know, I've lived in this community now for essentially 65 years. I can remember gathering newspapers in our neighborhood and taking them down to that site where EPAC is now. It was a thing called Vulpers. It was essentially a recycling yard back then. But we dropped the newspapers off. We'd have to go through mounds of old vehicles that were there for scrap and take it into the back and drop these papers off. So it wasn't a pretty facility by any means, and it was that type of facility 60 years ago. So the idea that this has been you know, a wooded lot back for a long time is just not the way I remember it. So PAC to me has done a very nice job of fixing that site up to make it presentable to a residential community that surrounds them. They've been good neighbors from everything we've heard. I have not heard any property maintenance complaints from our standards. And I do know for a fact they were looking at a site outside of the city, and we have been working with them to say, let's see if we can keep you inside the city on your site and let you continue producing, you know, your goods in a proper fashion. So I think don't let the picture get painted too drastic in how you know, the noise situation and those kind of things are at that site, because I have had no information that would substantiate that. Thank you.
Hi.
Mr. Cavan, please.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Miller. Do you anticipate this to increase truck traffic on Palmer Street?
Jason, your mic's off.
Sorry. Help me out with Palmer. We have.
It's right in front of the building there. Palmer dead ends into your business.
Oh, okay. So going then north. Okay. I would think not. Typically trucks would go out 1109 and then get to, go out Pittsburgh Avenue and then get to, the bypass or 30 or somewhere. I wouldn't anticipate trucks going north or increasing traffic in that area. Yeah, we're shipping these, across the, really across the region. And, truckers will want to get to the bigger roads as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Mr. Miller. Thanks again for your commitment to our community. We do appreciate it. And again, it is a commercial zone property. If I remember my zoning correctly, I know we don't have our zoning person on the call this evening, but you could literally build, I believe, within 50 foot of that property line that's your property. So I think you're making every accommodation that you can. We do appreciate that you are being a good neighbor to the best of your abilities. So thank you.
Any further discussion? I want to caution council, this is on the enterprise zone request, not a zoning request. He could do whatever he wanted as long as he meet with the zoning requirements with the property. I'm a little disturbed that we're trying to connect landscaping with an enterprise zone request. That's why we have a planning commission and a board of zoning codes. So I'm thinking we're getting pretty far afield in terms as my approach as to the legal aspect of this. Does this meet the requirements for a enterprise zone request? I understand that neighbors are concerned, but they could go ahead and develop this without them going through this process if they just decided they didn't want the enterprise zone request. So I would take that in terms of your matter with regard to tonight's vote. So
Along those same lines, President Biden, in my discussion with the neighbors, I did highlight that the property owner, the business owner could continue along this course without the abatement and nothing would change. We're just trying to support economic development and retain a viable manufacturing organization within our community, because you're right, this is certainly a zoning issue. And that's why my discussion with Mr. Miller was a contingency request for consideration. He's an individual that I'm confident we can trust, and he'll do his best to mitigate within reason the visual of his new expansion there. But obviously they could do this without the abatement. The abatement is a big help to them. And it's not significant dollars over the 10-year period, but it is enough to make it worthwhile for them to be able to have that incentive. So they are aware of that. There's nothing that can really be done if they're committed to expanding on that property.
That's correct. I agree with Mr. Ansel. This is not an abatement issue. They meet the criteria. They have the unanimous support of the WEDC, the Planning Commission, and the schools. All of the criteria. I mean, these are nice conversations to have. We certainly support input from the residents, but I concur. It's not relative to the abatement request.
Correct. Thank you.
I saw Mr. Malay had his hands up. So do you wish to weigh in or correct?
I would just like to highlight one point from the applicant's application document, and that is essentially the purpose of this is to allow the firm to help make these improvements to its facility and use these savings that the enterprise zone would provide so that they can invest in additional hiring. So on top of their 120 person staff today, to be able to add 15 new jobs in this area. So that is how it exceeds the EZ criteria from staff's perspective as we were working with them on this back in December. That's all I have.
And at the risk of bringing up the specter of our most recent zoning change, if memory serves me correct, it was bandied about that this development that I'm talking about was at least 300 feet from the property line. So I'm not sure with this being 300 feet that that's any different. So I just bring that to your all attention because that was part of that discussion. And that had to do with zoning. This does not have to do with zoning. All right, seeing nothing further, there's been a motion and a second, a vigorous discussion. So at this point in time, our eyes turn to you, Mr. Paulo, and ask you to call the roll on the motion to adopt.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
No.
Warden,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
and Bostancic.
No.
Mr. Bidendyke, your mic's off.
Uh-oh,
Uh-oh.
Mike, you're muted.
your mic's still off. There you
we
go.
Oh, I love this tablet. Did I tell you how much I love this tablet? Well, it passes 5-2, which means it won't go into immediate enactment. It will go into enactment at the earliest time allowed by law. So since it didn't get the requisite 3/4. Am I correct, Mr. Scavelli? Time
That
you
is
weigh in here?
That is correct.
Okay, so that being said, ordinance number 2021-19 passes. We turn from unfinished business to new business, item 7 on the agenda. The first item is resolution number 2021-26. Again, it will be Mr. Ansel. Mr. Ansel, this might be your this is your swan song in terms of
My final budget presentation.
yes, my God, what are we gonna do next year? Anyways, before I get to that, Mr. Paulo, would you please read the title?
Resolution number 2021-26. A resolution providing for the annual tax budget for fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022.
Of course, this is slated for 3 readings, and I know there will be a public hearing before we get to the 3rd reading. But Mr. Ansel, I'll let you present this for the first time tonight, which will be the last time will be your first presentation of budgets. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this is certainly a bittersweet process. And the final one is for the 2022 fiscal year. As we are all aware, this is the annual tax budget projections, which is required by the Ohio Revised Code, which is the tax budget or financial plan for operations of the city for the next calendar year 2022. In short, it identifies how much money is expected from the local, state, and federal sources, the anticipated fund carryover balances, and how much is needed to carry on the city governments for the upcoming year. The County Budget Commission will then set our property tax rate based on these projections. We will have a finance committee meeting, which we have to have a public meeting to review this. It will be brief. Andre will go through the discussion points of which we all have received the Exhibit A for this piece of legislation. We will keep this on first reading this evening. We will have a brief public meeting at 7:30, Monday, June 7th, of which I will be out of town that evening. And I'll ask that Mr. Myers chair that Finance Committee review public meeting and work through this process so we can have this finalized well in advance of the June deadline. So thank you for that, Mr. Doherty, and everyone. We can look at the financial projections and proceed accordingly. Thank you.
When you were talking about a public meeting there, Mr. Anson, we mean the public hearing?
Yeah, public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going
Semantics.
well, we're not having a separate meeting.
No.
It's a hearing within the regular
Public
meeting.
hearing, correct.
And any thoughts of having a committee meeting prior to that? That's why I got confused, because you mentioned a possible committee meeting too.
My error, my apology, yes.
Okay. I just want to give you all the credence you're entitled to your last presentation of a budget. So
We'll have our finance committee sessions when we delve deep into the budget at the end
yes,
of the year.
back when,
Yes,
yeah, back when we go into the appropriations portion.
correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for that presentation, and
Somehow you muted again, Mr. Beitendijk.
whoops. Our next resolution is 2021-27. It'll be presented by Mr. Silvestri. It is slated for 3 reading. Mr. Paulo, please read the title if you would.
Resolution number 2021-27. A resolution authorizing the clerk of council to certify an assessment to the county auditor to collect the availability fee required under Worcester Codified Ordinance Chapters 923 and 924.
Okay, Mr. Silvestri, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. The description of the request pretty much speaks for itself. There was a sanitary sewer line that was constructed by the city of Worcester along the backs of the properties there on West Liberty Street. And there was a fee that is still outstanding and unpaid by the property owner. But I want to be brief tonight and just say that after conversations with our director of law, the city of Worcester is in discussions and negotiations with the property owner. So I hereby move to table this resolution this evening.
Okay, Mr. Silvestri moved to table this resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bostancic. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to table resolution number 2021-27?
Bostancic,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes,
Cavan.
Yes.
All right, resolution number 2021-27 is tabled. And under our rules is if it's not brought off the table within the year, it expires. So that brings us to resolution 2021-28. It'll be presented by Ms. Warden. It's scheduled for 3 readings. Mr. Paulo, would you please read it?
Resolution number 2021-28. A resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a contract with H.W. Hunter Properties 3 LLC for the purchase of land, appropriating necessary funds and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Over the past couple of years, the city purchased several of the residential properties that were located adjacent to our community center downtown. However, one piece of land has remained privately owned thus far. It is 224 East Henry Street. Members of the administration have been in communication with the current property owner and recently secured a purchase agreement for that, for the sale of that property with a price of $152,000 and which also includes a 2-year lease to rent the property. This is essentially the final piece of the puzzle that will now allow for future expansion and of the community center. So basically, the city is looking to begin the process to start planning the steps that will be involved to meet all the local needs, because they've been very limited. It's been very landlocked as it was. So this opens up a lot of new possibilities for our community center, which is very exciting. I'm sure Ms. Hirschberger would agree. So basically the city is hoping to allow for increased recreational activities and community services, as well as to bring in different athletic tournaments, all of which add to the quality of life in our community and potential income, especially for our bed tax partners. So this is apparently a very time-sensitive agreement. And so because of that, I'm moving to place resolution 2021-28 on third and final reading this evening.
Ms. Morgan has moved
Second.
place the resolution on third and final reading and thereby suspending the rules. Is there a second?
Second. Mr.
Second by
Cavan.
Mr. Cavan. Ms. DiPaolo, would you call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic.
Yes.
That's it.
All right, the rules have been suspended. Ms. Warren, do you have another motion?
I do. I'd like to move to adopt, please.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cavan. Okay. Further discussion, questions? Now's the time.
Ms. Hirschberger, this is Scott Myers. I just want to point out that you've been successfully able to move the project forward where Mr. Baddick hasn't been unable to. So congratulations. And I wish Jeff were listening so I could give
He
him
is. He is. He's listening. Thanks, Scott.
And Mr. Baddick, we're going to sorely miss you and we appreciate your years of service. Thank you.
Yes, but the power behind the throne has finally risen to the top. Seeing no further discussion, Ms. DiPaolo, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Myers,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic.
Yes.
Resolution number 2021-28 passes. Let's look at ordinance 2021-20. It'll be presented by Mr. Silvestri. It's slated for 3 readings. Mr. Paulo, once again, I turn to you and ask you, please read the title.
Ordinance number 2021-20. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration to grant or assign necessary utility easement for the Wooster Betterment Project and the Wooster Innovation Park to Dominion Energy, Ohio, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Silvestri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is to give our Director of Administration authorization to grant necessary utility easements to Dominion in 2 areas. I want to applaud the foresight of both the City of Worcester and Dominion for seeing that we need to increase the availability of natural gas as evidenced by the amount of usage during peak times throughout the year, particularly the dead of winter when everyone's using more natural gas than they do at any other time. So we're looking ahead here. We're seeing that we need to connect some spots and make natural gas more available to within the city of Worcester. So that's the idea, is this Worcester Betterment Project. There's two areas. You'll see Exhibit A lays out in kind of in pieces an easement through our Oak Hill Park, running from Oak Hill Road all the way to Mechanicsburg Road. That's the Exhibit A. And in Exhibit B, you have an easement running east off of Melrose Drive. It takes a couple of angular turns, and then it takes a 90-degree turn to the south and goes up all the way to Daisy Way. And that's at the Worcester Innovation Park that we have recently acquired. And anyway, there's two different easements as part of this ordinance. And I did speak with Roger, and you know, there's a few trees maybe that need to be trimmed there. But I know that we looked ahead at the property and that the major ones are going to be left in place. So I'm glad that we've got the foresight to consider such a thing this evening. And I will now motion to suspend the rules and place ordinance 2021-20 on third and final reading this evening.
Motion by Mr. Silvestri to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ansel. Mr. Paulo, would you please call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
and Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Silvestri, I look to you again.
Yes, I motion to adopt, Mr. President.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Silvestri. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Warden. Any further discussion? Seems like a no-brainer. If we're going to develop the property, we have to provide the gas to the people we're selling the property to, so. Seeing no further discussion, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Bostancic,
Yes.
and Myers.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2021-20 passes. And the final piece of legislation, ordinance 2021-21, will be presented by Ms. Warden, is slated for 3 readings. Before I get to you, Ms. Warden, again, I will ask Mr. Paulo to please read the title.
Ordinance number 2021-21. An ordinance authorizing the sale of property to the Worcester Growth Corporation and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This ordinance has to do with the 5L Farms property, which is now known as Worcester Innovation Park. Upon the recent land transfer agreement between the city of Worcester and the Worcester Brush Corporation, the city has 14.36 acres of land that adjoin the Innovation Park, but have not yet been zoned into the park's intended use, which is industrial. As it stands, the property is zoned R2 and has physical limitations preventing some of the parcel to join into the industrial and commercial development opportunities that exist for the remaining property. The city is looking to transfer this parcel to the Worcester Growth Corporation, as we did with the rest of the land in the park about a month ago. If council approves this measure, the land could be combined with the 42.6 acres to the immediate south, that thus creating a more desirable parcel for significant job creating opportunities. Worcester Growth will purchase this land for the fee of $10 and will manage the details pertaining to its marketing and its sale. Jobs Ohio has already paid for a phase 1 geotechnical and an archaeological survey for this site to ensure its viability to various economic development projects. The city intends to install a landscaped buffering area along Melrose Drive, directing heavy industrial traffic to the more appropriate Old Airport Road route, and also providing a barrier for sound and vision between the Innovation Park and the surrounding residential areas. So in order to give Worcester Growth ample time to request rezoning for this particular parcel, I move that we place the ordinance on third and final reading tonight.
All right, a motion by Ms. Warden to put this on third and final reading. So is there someone who will
Second.
the suspension of the rules? Mr. Silvestri seconded. If you would, Mr. Paulo, one last time with regard to the suspension of the rules, call the roll.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
and Sanders.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended. Do you have another motion for us, Ms. Warden?
I do. I move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Silvestri. He jumped in there ahead of you, Mr. Stanzik. Any further discussion? This is who we use to market our property. As I have remarked in the past, the Worcester Growth Corporation is a creature of the city's council, and they work on behalf of the city council. So this is what we've done for a number of years, and it's just the step, hopefully be able to eventually sell this to a worthy developer or corporation who wants to expand or locate here in the city of Worcester. And I'm trying to keep Mr. Malay from talking because he will wax more eloquently and longer than I have. Seeing no further discussion.
Mr. Scavelli has him on permanent mute.
Yeah.
Mr. Beitendijk, if I could clarify one little thing that I noticed, and I spoke with Mr. Malay about earlier, but in case any of my colleagues were curious, in our packets, there was a typo that said that the property would hopefully be rezoned to I-2. That was, like I said, a typo. It was intended to say I-1.
Yeah, it shows on the map I-1. So I got fat fingers, which is why I usually use voice recognition. So if I make a mistake, it's the program's problem and not my typing skills. So. All right, noting that, any further discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Silvestri,
Yes.
Warden,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Bastancik,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
and Sanders.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-21 passes. And before I get to miscellaneous, unless there is a great hue and outcry, instead of seeing you in living color by Zoom, hopefully to see you in person at the June 7th meeting. That will be exciting.
All for that.
So, seeing that, we'll start with miscellaneous. We'll start with Mr. Myers at the bottom of my screen, and I'll just work up.
Thank you, President Beitendijk. I'm at the top of my screen, but at any rate, just
But you're strong on my screen. You're holding everyone up.
okay. Great. I have nothing further to add, only that we will miss Mr. Ansel and his budget conversations when he departs us at the end of the year. But he has been a great tutor for me for the last 7 going on 8 years on the finance committee, and hopefully I'll take over that helm and continue his great success as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Warden.
Thank you. I actually just have a question. I'm wondering if Mr. Montgomery or perhaps Mayor Brenneman can answer for me. I meant to ask it earlier when Roger was on, but I had a couple of residents curious to know when, if, first of all, they said if, and I said assuredly if this would happen, but when the company who recently laid the pipe and paved Lincoln Street would be back to collect all their materials, including their porta-johns. They've been sitting there for a little while. And so I'm wondering if you know when that might happen.
I don't know the exact date, but I will definitely get with Roger first thing in the morning and find out when that's going to happen.
I
And
appreciate it.
encourage them to do it very quickly.
Yeah, they did say they're very happy with the nice smooth paved street they have now, but it'd be nice to not have porta-johns in the yard.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Mr.
all.
Sanders.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Beitendijk, was that me?
No, Mr. Sanders.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I have nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bostancic,
I have nothing more to add as well.
Mr. Cavan,
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Mr. Silvestri, now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I want to thank the representative from EPAC Manufacturing for signing on to the meeting and for taking the concerns of the neighborhood into consideration and for taking those seriously. Also wanted to congratulate Mrs. Ashley Brilhart Hirschberger in her acceptance of her new position and her new role. And we will miss Mr. Badig for sure. But I want to thank the administration for the work that they do on a regular basis to keep our city running smoothly. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Mr. Ansel, we'll give you the last word here.
Yes, congratulations, Ashley, a well-deserved promotion, career opportunity. And I just want to reassure you that Mr. Badig and myself are planning our Monday night fishing excursions in 2022, because while you're working very diligently, hopefully we'll be catching some fish. So that's all I have. Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Mr. Ansel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Warden. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, one and all.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.